This is Coder Radio, Episode 4, for July 2nd, 2012. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining us like every single week is our host, Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Morning, sunshine.
Good morning to you, sir, and boy, 4 episodes. That means we're a month in now, sir.
A full month. It's amazing.
I know, and like you were just saying on the pre-show, we have got a ton of content coming up. We've been reshuffling things around. You've been tracking things and trying to fit them in schedules for, projection of what we're going to be talking about. And it's just been nuts.
Yeah, a lot of user-generated topics that I never would have thought of. It's just, it's getting tough to keep up with the news and the more general topics. It's kind of crazy, especially in the summer.
We're very fortunate. So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about Google I/O. Google I/O is really big, so we're splitting it into pieces. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Google Plus and a lot about Android.
Today, this Google I/O to me seemed like their biggest yet. Not just because they were skydiving, but just the whole all of it. Like their polish was much better. I still have, if I was actually going to break down their presentations, I still have quite a bit of critiques. But in terms of like how they paced it, the cadence, and the things that they highlighted, and also, their ability to still kind of feel very real in their presentation. I thought this year Google really nailed it.
Yeah, I was actually shocked. I mean, I knew they do a good job, but it was fantastic. I was glued just watching it on my other monitor. It was the skydiving was a good touch. I like Sergey jumping up and Kanyeing the poor guy presenting.
Right, yeah, Vic, yeah. The live stream also, I watched it on YouTube in high definition the entire time. I also had the Twit feed up going, and the Twit feed actually had a little better audio quality, so when nothing too terribly interesting was going on, I'd flip over to that and let them kind of do their Mystery Science Theater version of it, and then when they got to something really good, I would mute Twit and turn back on the audio on the YouTube feed.
My only issue this year was that it ended up costing me money somehow.
What did?
The Google Plus, not the Google Plus, I'm sorry. The Google I/O.
Oh, why? Because you had to buy goodies?
I had to buy stuff. They did such a good job. I kept hitting refresh, had the credit card in hand.
Well, that's one of these items are one of the many things we're going to talk about today, aren't they?
That's right.
Should we do some feedback first, though? Because we, once again, have been just inundated with a ton of great feedback from the audience, which is so awesome because it's one of the indicators that we use to measure the success of a show. And strong feedback is sometimes it sounds crazy, but it's more important than numbers. But the numbers are great too. But the feedback has been so awesome that I know you had to boil some of it down, so we didn't go through like hundreds of them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you just sent in how much you like the show. That's great. Keep it coming. I'm not necessarily going to read that on the air, though. But we do appreciate it because, like I said, it helps us it's a metric for us. Yeah, it helps us, especially if you tell me about what kind of development you do. That's really helpful. Additionally, no one mentioned World War II at all in the feedback this week, so I'm happy.
That's good.
But should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so James asks, why do so many IDEs have terminals built in, and is it really important to know the command line? So the first question kind of answers the second question, or this other way around. So the reason all these IDEs have terminals built in is because lots of people, myself included, prefer to use the terminal or command line to do their basic housekeeping, source control, and other productivity tasks while developing. Is it important to know the command line? Now that's flame bait.
I could see that.
For me personally, it is, but I tend to work on Unix systems. And in my own usage, I am much faster with, say, Git on the terminal than I am in any kind of GUI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are a beginner, you could definitely do some damage on the command line, particularly with your source control. So that is really up to you. I know a lot of .NET developers that I'm friendly with hate the command line with a passion. So again, I think it's very subjective. Again, I know, if you're using a modern IDE like Eclipse, you really don't have to use the command line if you don't want to. But I do feel like you're giving up some power by not. It also depends on your platform. I mean, if you're on a Linux system, you probably will be better off in the command line.
Would it be true to say that the other advantage to knowing the command line would be that if you move between IDEs, some of those commands are still the same old command lines, so you can still kind of get some of the same job done even in a new environment?
Yeah, I mean, good example for Android, I didn't like the previous versions of Eclipse, so I was using IntelliJ and at some point just Vim for some editing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do all my code signing, all my compiling right from the command line.
Yeah.
And, Java C doesn't change based on your IDE. All the IDE is doing is calling Java C or, GCC or LLVM.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So really, it's a personal choice. But if you feel like you're not moving or getting things done fast enough, I would take some time and learn some command line. Commands for tools that you use. If you're a C coder, GCC is your buddy. But yeah, again, I'm trying to avoid the flame here, but I think it is important. So
yeah, I could see that. I could see that being something that I guess you could, maybe as a Windows developer, it's something that you could avoid for quite a while, right?
Well, interestingly, Windows has now introduced a product called PowerShell.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is basically Bash. I mean, a lot of the commands work across Bash and PowerShell.
A lot of the ideas are the same too.
A lot of the ideas are the same. So it almost seems like they're acknowledging that there is a speed benefit to working in the command line.
Interestingly enough, too, is Microsoft's server administrative tools have been rebuilt so that a lot of them, most of them on the back end, actually are executing PowerShell commands. So you can open up the PowerShell and execute the same commands you could do at the GUI level. So it's almost more of a more traditional a GUI separation where you have a client that runs the commands in the background, almost like you would on a Linux or Unix system. That's what the new Microsoft server tools are doing.
Yeah, and a lot of those tools, I mean, obviously you can write Bash scripts, PowerShell you can write scripts for. If you have a little knowledge or interest in scripting, you'll be infinitely faster on the command line because you can just automate silly little tasks. Rather than, running through a GUI 10 times, you just write one script and run it.
Yep, totally. Okay.
All right, should we move along?
Yeah.
All right, Paul wants to know about bad habits in software development. And more to the point, he would like perhaps an episode discussing them.
Huh.
Well, that episode would be about 10 hours long.
A 10-part series.
10-part series. It starts with naming variables with one-letter names and ends with blowing up the source control system. Because that's usually where your job is going to end. Blow up Git enough times and you're in trouble. I think it's a good idea, but I don't want to focus on the negative too much. So if there's interest in it, we'll definitely do it. And we could even get maybe horror stories from the audience and perhaps read them out.
That'd be good. Yeah, if people are interested in that, send a little blurb. Don't make it too long.
Yeah, send a little blurb. Maybe no longer than 3 tweets. And we could definitely do that sometime in the distant future.
Yeah. You know what else would be fun is, not fun, probably would get mean, so we shouldn't do it. But take a really beloved open source project and just look at some of the source and be like, oh no.
No, we're not doing that. I'll tell you
I know,
why.
see, that could get ugly, right?
There's a guy in the .NET community known as Ayinde Rahim. Sorry if I mispronounced that. He's Israeli and I'm from New Jersey. He did that. And he does it frequently to .NET open source projects and just rips them, and people get upset. And
yeah,
it's one thing to fork a project and do your own version because you don't like what they did, or even to send a private email with maybe some tips. But I think publicly doing it on a blog or something is rough.
I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been more common though.
I think it is common.
Oh, okay.
I think what happens is it happens in forums rather than on someone's blog.
Ah.
Yeah, and he's kind of made his whole professional persona is that he's kind of a jerk.
Oh, what a nice human being.
Like, if you read his blog, the way he approaches a contract is he comes in and beats up all the employee developers. And it's not my approach. He's also a lot older than me, so he has a more license to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't like getting negative So I think we should pass on that.
I know what you mean. I hear you.
Another tip, a anonymous listener, and if you are part of Anonymous, don't attack my servers, recommends learn code the hard way. I think we did talk about this once, but they have a great course, I think, for Python and maybe Ruby, he says. I've never used it, but I've heard about it all over the place. So if you're interested in learning code and enjoy pain, go for it.
There you go. Well, actually, that is a great segue. You remember last week we talked about Code School, right? That was your tool of the week.
Yes.
And awesome fact is that they have a affiliate program. And so this is such a good time with the show that we got signed up with their affiliate program. So now, if you want to sign up for Code School, like we talked about last week, there's a link in the show notes where we'll get a little bit of a kickback if you do that. And I think depending on what you go with, we get different levels. But go check it out because I know, Michael, you like Code School, right?
Love Code School.
Yeah, and it looks really well done.
It is really well done. And the nice thing is, what I do use it for is I actually tend to study the courses on technologies I either haven't used in a while or don't use, just to be a little more well-rounded.
Yeah, definitely. And so would they say their slogan is "Learn by doing"? Do you actually? How do they do that? Do you know?
Oh yeah, you actually have to write code, and it evaluates it in the web browser. And tells
no kidding.
Yeah.
Is it? Do you ever get like, boy, this is really bad? Do you ever get like? Did they ever say anything like that, or is it all very nice?
They're very polite. They've taken my approach, I think.
What
they do is if it's really bad, they offer you a hint.
Oh yeah, okay. So like, try this out. That makes sense. Then you're actually learning. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And it all runs just in the browser?
Yeah, I mean, I run it in Chrome. So again, if you're using IE 7 or 6, don't.
You got other problems besides going to Code School. So
it's really great.
So check it out. So if you remember us talking about that last week, or you're interested in that, please use the link we have in the show notes or at the bottom of the website. That's the one that if you use that, we get credit and we get a little kickback. So it'll be a cool way to support the show. So what do you say we move into some of the Google I.O. stuff?
All right, let's do it.
All right, now why don't we talk about the thing that, I mean, we would just be burying the lead if we don't talk about the Nexus 7 tablet first.
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
I had to buy it. If this doesn't make Android a real force in the tablet market and the Kindle Fire doesn't count, and I'll explain why the Kindle Fire doesn't count, then there's no hope. This thing, the specs are amazing.
Yeah.
It's a 7-inch form factor, which a lot of people like.
And the price is nuts.
And the price is right. $200 is the right price.
Yeah, it's exactly the right price. I mean, when I heard that price, I was like, oh, wow. So this is, they're not making very much money on this.
They're making no money, they said.
So what's the long-term, I guess they want to make money off the Play Store with it.
They want to make money off of Play. I'm sure they're doing some interesting stuff with data.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, you know what it probably is too, though? To me, the Kindle Fire is probably the worst thing that could ever have happened to Android.
Wow, really?
Sure, it's not a very good device that was cheap enough that a lot of people bought. So now whenever I'm dealing with the tablet size on Android, I have to worry about this underpowered piece of junk.
Yeah.
And it's not like some knockoff from overseas that only a few people have.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most common devices.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got it, even swiping open the lock screen, it was laggy. It was terrible, even their own apps.
Yeah, and this is sort of what happened with Android on the phone front. Remember, the G1 was extremely underpowered.
Yeah,
and it sort of set this bias towards Android being slow.
What happens is if somebody has a Kindle Fire and somebody has an iPad, you know, the common user doesn't know that, oh, well, the Kindle Fire is a modified version of Android and Amazon was cheap. They just know, oh, Android looks laggy.
Actually,
iPad looks good.
I don't think a lot of people, I mean, a lot of general consumers might not even be aware it is Android on the Kindle Fire. So that might have been a bit of a you know, a windfall for Google, because it's like it's not branded or anything. It's all Amazon-fied, you know. But I mean, if you know what you're looking for, if you know what the controls look like and stuff, you know. But do you think general consumers know that?
If they go to the Amazon App Store, I believe it does say Android on there, or it used to.
Oh, okay. Well, that sucks.
Even if they don't know, you know, if the Kindle Fire, the Nook color, which is actually pretty good, and the iPad are the three most common devices, and one looks awful, people are going to pick one or the other too.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it fragments the ecosystem. You can't get the Play Store without doing some jailbreaking type things. They have their own in-app purchase, their own store, basically, their own requirements for developers. It's not a good thing from Google's perspective.
Well,
now,
can I ask you then, before you go too far, where do you sit then in terms of the Nook?
The Nook, I think the Nook, I've played with the Nook, and I briefly had one before I sold it. I like the Nook because the Nook is actually nice. To me, the Nook is not really a competitor in the tablet space.
Okay, because it's sold as an e-reader more directly.
Yeah, and Barnes & Nobles are very restrictive on their store because they're aiming for a different market. And I think people buying the Nook aren't necessarily going to look at the Nexus tablet.
Well, yeah, I agree. Although the price is, it's closer to the Nook than the iPad, that's for sure. But now comes along the Nexus 7. This is getting a lot of buzz. I mean, I think this is what people are. I think people look at this and they go, "Oh, so this is what a modern Android tablet is." Don't you think?
I hope so. The big risk is that the Kindle Fire is too entrenched. But if this became the de facto standard tablet, that would be great for Android developers.
Yeah.
This thing is, you're showing a video of it now. Honestly, this is one of the most well-designed Google products I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure. I'm amazed that they put it together in 4 months, like they say. And the processor spec in the thing, it's got some sort of crazy amount of cores that sound completely almost illegitimate to be real.
It is. Okay, so the whole quad-core thing, and I should have linked to the article, but Android overall doesn't do multi-core quite as well as it could.
I've heard those criticisms, though I heard that those criticisms mostly came from Intel people.
They came from Intel people, but it doesn't make it not true.
Okay.
And even if you just forget about the way the OS handles it, most developers on a budget don't handle multi-core very well.
Right.
This is why sometimes, especially on mobile devices, you'll see lockup in the UI because people aren't handling threads properly.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm curious about is this device has 4 cores. Majority of devices have 1 core. Some have 2. Are developers going to specifically do anything to take advantage of multi-core?
Do they have to, or is that just dependent on Google making efficiencies on their Java virtual machine and those kinds of things?
There's certainly stuff Google could do, but there's no free lunch in multi-core.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, oh, Google's done this, they've done that. But ultimately, at some point, even on iOS, you have to handle threading at some level.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whether you use GCD or something like that, you have to keep things off the main thread, if at all possible. I just don't know. I want this to be great, and I think it will be. I'm just worried that developers won't reach its full potential.
They kind of, but desktops have the same issue in a lot of regards. But the thing is look at all of the tablets that are coming on the market in 2012. All of them have multi-core now. So, this is just now becoming sort of up to the, now it's, okay, developers, it's in your hands at this point. Don't you think? And maybe the Nexus will just continue to push that trend line, because don't all of the tablets suffer this issue? And so therefore this is just one more tablet jumping on the multi-core pile that's pushes developers in that direction?
A lot of the tablets do, but this isn't really a tablet issue per se, right? Multi-core has been a problem for a long time. And the problem is, A, it's very hard. B, if you're on a budget, a lot of developers just ignore it.
Yeah.
This is an issue you see on the server. This is an issue on desktop applications.
Oh, yeah.
My concern is that people targeting more limited hardware, in addition to the Nexus 7, will just boil it down to its lowest common denominator. And you'll get Kindle Fire quality on the Nexus 7. And none of this, multi-core, these quad cores will be taken advantage of at all. I hope that's not true.
Yeah. I mean, you want to see a really strong competitor to the iPad, because if you look at the actual market share numbers, the iPad's got a really, really, really big lead.
It's got an iron grip. The thing is, historically, you tend to see the lowest common denominator, right? But
you see, the problem is, and I see what you're getting at, is in the iPad world, the lowest common denominator is still a tablet that's better than the Kindle Fire and those types of tablets. Like the lowest rung on the iPad rung is much higher than the lowest rung of the Android ring. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do, and I wouldn't say the Kindle Fire is the worst tablet. It's a big factor only because it's one of the most common tablets.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There are certainly really cheap knockoffs that are a lot worse.
Yeah, like my Zenithing C71 is really pretty bad.
I mean, one thing game developers will probably love the Nexus 7 because it definitely has the power to back them.
Yeah.
But again, I'm hopeful. I bought one. So
here's why I think it's an amazing piece of hardware. I really, really want one. I'm just, I don't need one. I think the problem is I'm going to sound like a broken record in this episode, but I think it's too tied to Google Play. Google Play hasn't proven itself at all. It didn't under any other name either. And so to ship a device with only 8 gigs of storage, or 16 at the high end, means that what you're really saying is video content is streaming. You're streaming your video content to this thing. And we don't even know if Netflix works on it at this point. And we don't know how long it will until Netflix does work on it. And these kinds of things, I think, to me, in actual consumer minds, make these things not ready yet for consumers, which means you're not going to hit that threshold you need to really gain some traction. Because those questions that I'm asking are really well answered by the Apple solution. And I think we might see in a few months Google Play really is a solid offering. They've got a bunch of more movie studios now. They've done a lot of facelifts, so maybe we'll see some of these things improve. But if you get down to the fundamentals of like the marketplace, I was just on an Android developer forum this morning, and there's people on there that are saying, why when I search for my app do I find dozens and dozens of illegitimate knockoffs of my app before I actually find my own app, even though it has thousands of downloads and tons of ratings? And these are fundamental problems that Google is still not solving.
Yeah, actually, I have just a quick side tangent on that. I actually had one of my apps stolen off of the Google market.
Really?
And repacked because I didn't use DRM because I don't like DRM. It basically forced me to reevaluate my whole Android strategy. It's ironic, really. A big search, big data company can't figure out how to filter out fraudulent apps.
Exactly. This is what's so weird about it. And so it feels like they have the horse before the cart on some of this stuff.
Well, to me, it feels like they're taking philosophy over business practical needs, right? You could philosophically say anybody can upload anything and we don't check it. Great. The net effect of that is there are scammers and fraudsters out there who are going to rob you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't want to see another walled garden, but there needs to at least be a bodyguard or some kind of doorman that just says, I'm sorry, your upset birds, in quotes, is not allowed on the App Store.
Upset birds. Yeah, I've seen things like that though. It's very true. All right, well, I guess we're kind of moving off of the Nexus 7. Should we talk a little Jelly Bean?
Jelly Bean looks amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm very interested that they called it 4.1 rather than 5.0, and I think we mentioned it at the end of the show last week.
We might have done it off air, but yeah, I agree that this shows that we're kind of slowing down, we're stabilizing a bit, we're just going a point release. That's all. Nobody freak out.
Yeah, and I think it's almost a concession to say, yes, the handset makers and carriers are not updating, so we're going to slow down our release cycle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. That's pure conjecture. Either way, looking at some of the docs in the API, it's not a radical change from Ice Cream Sandwich, which means the platform's stable, which is great for everybody.
Yeah. And didn't they say at the last I/O they were going to start slowing down a little bit?
Yeah, but they say a lot of things.
That's true. That's true. I would like to talk about the first feature that they announced in Jelly Bean. It was like it was really the first thing they announced in the keynote because it was the first actual feature. And that was Project Butter. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Project Butter's very near and dear to my heart. So one problem I've had as a developer on Android doing cross-platform apps or an Android and an iOS version is normally scrolling, the iOS version tends to look a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some implementation reasons for that in the OS. And this has really been a big thing for Android. Now they've done this Project Butter with 4.1 that is going to make just all animation, scrollings, things like that so much smoother. It's a simple thing, it's a simple UX thing, but for clients or your employer, nothing will take someone out of an experience worse than a jittery scroll or a jittery animation.
And it really, when you feel like the screen has literally locked onto your finger, it's a much more connected. You feel like you feel like you're getting a much better, more responsive feedback, and that's so important in a touch interface.
And the best part is, as a developer, you're getting this for free.
Right.
Write your app the way it's written, and if the version's correct, this will all be done for you. This is system wide.
Yeah. What do you think, though? Isn't this essentially Google coming out and saying, "Yeah, okay, Android's slow"?
Well, Android is slow, comparatively speaking, but Android, you can get into a platform flame war saying, "Well, Android's slow, so iOS and other platforms do it better." But Android's a little higher level, I would say, in terms of the implementation of the OS. So it's a Java virtual machine, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're compiling an iPhone app, you're compiling straight down to machine code.
Mm-hmm.
Android, for a while, in some older versions, didn't deal with the GPU acceleration well.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is newer versions do. And Project Butter is just taking that a step further and making it really noticeable. I don't think you can fault them for improving something or saying, yeah, you improved it now, but you didn't before.
Right. No, that's true. No, it's just the only reason is because I've been slammed over the years for saying I feel like Android just isn't as responsive, and people have jumped on me saying that that's just not true. But I feel
it is true. Even they showed you in their presentation, they used the high speed camera, and they proved that it was slow.
Okay, here's the other reason I don't like it, and then we can move on. I don't have to belabor this, but the other reason I don't like it is because it sounds honestly a little hacky. What they're doing is they're predicting where the user is going to touch, and then they're pre-ramping. They're taking the CPU out of sleep mode, and they're ramping up the processor speed before the user touches it, so that way the CPU is ready to go. That sounds like what it is there's a fundamental design limitation in the operating system. So what they're doing is instead they're waking up the CPU and speeding it up faster, unnecessarily wasting processor cycles and power, so that way they can make it appear like the operating system is more responsive than it actually is.
Yes, that's probably true.
That really bugs me because it sounds like they have some real core issues with the way their screen updates are drawn and the way that their detection of input works.
Well, they're always going to have performance issues. Another thing, and not to draw too many comparisons, though, is there is a lot of different Android phones with a lot of different processors.
Yeah.
So they can't just write, perfectly crafted assembly language for a particular processor and be good to go. And they are operating at a much higher level in terms of language implementation.
Right.
Now, I guess you're concerned that they may incorrectly predict what you're going to do.
Maybe, or it just honestly seems like if it's always going to have to be guessing what I'm doing, it's always going to be keeping the CPU going, that's just going to waste power on a platform that already struggles with battery usage.
Right. So I don't have this in my hand. I don't know how well the algorithm works or how poorly it works. But you're definitely right. Whenever you're trying to predict the user's next move, you could definitely waste some battery life. I would hope that given Google is one of the best engineering companies in the world, they figured out a good way to do this.
Yeah.
I hope it's not a giant for loop. But, we'll see. I think you're more concerned than you need to be honest.
Good. I'm sure I am. All right. Well, any other thoughts on Project Butter?
No, I'm excited. The demo looked good, but again,
I really want Jelly Bean on all of my Android devices. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, as much as I sound a little skeptical, it sounds like a really solid release and better performance. I'll take that.
The only thing, because this is a developer show, you're not going to be writing apps to Jelly Bean or even Ice Cream Sandwich. You're still writing to 2.3 or 2.2.
Right.
So it's unfortunate that you're getting almost none of this. In fact, you are getting none of this now that I look at the list. Again, that's an issue that, I'm wondering with the Nexus 7, will developers start just targeting 4.0?
Maybe.
I doubt it because of the Kindle Fire and that screen resolution.
They announced a handful of devices in July will get Jelly Bean. and they're kind of like the top tier devices. So I think what you're starting to see is here's a top tier that is going to get updates and have the new toys, and then this lower rung of the cheaper stuff is kind of just a nicer version of a feature phone that is sort of just set in time. Kind of seems to be what's happening. Maybe this PDK they've announced will change some of that.
Maybe. Just one more point on the top tier devices, though.
Yeah.
So as a developer, saying you're only going to target the top tier devices is probably foolish.
Is it though? Because aren't they also then the consumers who spend money? Because they're the ones that are going to be buying apps because they're willing to spend a little more on their phone. They're almost like iPhone users, but they're Android. They'll spend more on the phone. You know how there's that study that shows iPhone users buy more because they're like more comfortable with spending money. Maybe it's the same for Nexus Galaxy 3 owners and people like that. Maybe they're more likely to buy apps. I know I am. I buy a Nexus. I have a Nexus S and an Evo 4G, and both of those were more expensive phones at the time. And if I got to spend $199, $299, $5 on an app, I'll do it.
But you're definitely making a lot of assumptions. So you're assuming the developer's business model is to sell the app, which is the business model I'm using, but is a very antiquated model
and tougher on Android.
And tougher on Google Play, not tougher on the Amazon App Store.
Right. Okay. Good distinction. Yeah.
So if there's a whole bunch of statistics out there and some third-party studies, the Amazon App Store is almost as profitable as the Apple App Store. It's Google Play that's not profitable, and the writer of the study does make, and I should find this and put in the show notes, he makes some theories about the lack of DRM because Amazon will put DRM on your app for you. And some things Google may or may not do to encourage you putting ads in. I mean, that's all not relevant, right? Either way, if you're not worried about, I don't even think that's true. I don't see why a 2.3 user might not buy an app just because he's on 2.3, but I guess that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah, you're probably right. Okay. Now PDK stuff.
The PDK.
Yeah.
So, all right. So real quick, what the PDK is, it's like an SDK for hardware developers. The idea is that manufacturers can quickly, get up to speed on the current version of Android. They're going to give it to them early.
Mm-hmm. I have a quick clip. Do you want me to play it?
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, this is from the Google I/O keynote.
Device partners 2 to 3 months before the platform release date of all future Android versions. Thanks. And we've actually started with this release. A beta version of the Jelly Bean PDK has already been available to a few partners for the last few weeks, and they've been providing us valuable feedback. We've incorporated that feedback, and now it's available to everyone on an ongoing basis. PDK enables Android OEMs and chipset makers to innovate in parallel with Google and ensure the latest Android release can be well optimized for their hardware.
There you go. That sounds pretty promising.
It's great. The ball's in the manufacturer's court again.
Yeah.
So I hope they do it.
They had a big announcement along these lines last year, too, that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing, I hope it works. Maybe it won't.
But a PDK sounds more like we looked at what the problem was, and now we think what we got to do is sort of reformulate the system so it works like this, and now we think this is the solution to this problem.
That could be true. I'm not willing to make any kind of conjecture about that, only because it seems more like a shot in the dark, almost like a desperate attempt to get manufacturers to actually update. But they'd still have to spend internal resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how this makes I guess it would be less work.
Yeah.
I hope it works out. The nice thing is if they make it public, they weren't clear if they are making it public.
No, they weren't clear, were they? Good point.
The docs are public because I was trying to find that out this morning. So what I'm hoping is that this becomes a tool for like the hacking community, like the cyanogen mod type people. Maybe they could target a specific piece of cheap hardware.
That'd be awesome.
Can you imagine a Raspberry Pi perfectly targeted with this thing?
That'd be pretty wild. That'd be great.
That's what I'd like to see.
That'd be great. Now, so hopefully that's the move Google takes.
Perhaps we should jump to the Google Play Store news because there was a lot of chatter in the chat room regarding it.
Okay.
And some confusion.
Okay.
So the first thing is app encryption.
Yeah.
At one point, the Android market, if you remember way back in the day when it was called that, did have DRM. Then they deprecated it, and last time I updated an app, they took it away.
Yeah.
Now they're putting it back. They're calling it an encryption. Basically, there's a key, or the way they explain it, there's a key for the specific device. So even if the person roots their phone and takes the APK, they can't send it anywhere. So that feels like a direct response to criticism from a lot of game developers who, there's a game called Braveheart that lost a lot of money on Android. It's a big hit on iOS due to piracy. That's great. I hope that brings more larger developers into the ecosystem, which will raise the bar. The other big change that is going to affect everyone is Delta updates. So previously, if you had a 20 meg Android app, every time the user updated it, they replaced the entire 20 megs and they had to download that, which is terrible. Now Delta updates literally does a delta of the app and only downloads the data that's needed to get to the newest version.
This sounds awesome.
This is similar. This is what Apple does, but this is the right way to do it because it means you can do more of your updates over 4G.
Yeah, or 3G even if it's
or even 3G.
Delta. Yeah.
This is a huge improvement. And as a developer, I don't have to worry about how big my updates are.
Now, do you know, are they able to apply this technology to the operating system? Wouldn't that be cool?
My understanding is this is actually done on the store.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
so
they mentioned they even do it for the developers through the store.
Yeah, so this, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
You just get this, which is nice. One thing I like about Google is they just give you things. There's no flags. There's nothing to set.
Yeah, that's nice. It's good for developers and for end users.
Yeah, you don't want to use up your data plan.
Yeah. All right. So what? Any other thoughts on the Play Store? Or I guess Google Play. It's hard to call it one thing, but...
If they would rename it to the Android Marketplace...
Yeah, that'd be much better, wouldn't it? I was hoping for that announcement.
It would make more sense, but I think they're pretty much committed at this point.
Did you want to touch on any of the other features in Jelly Bean, like the new notifications or any new APIs, anything like that?
Oh, yes, I did. I did want to touch upon the APIs for accessibility features.
Okay.
Now, and I do this a lot, it's sometimes hard to remember that there are users who perhaps don't have all the faculties that the majority of the population does. They might have some sight issues, some hearing issues.
Yeah.
And Google's done a lot in the Jelly Bean release to add new APIs so your app can be more accessible to those users.
That's awesome.
That's great. There's literally no downside. It'll take you a little more time, but you really should implement some of these APIs. If just for the perfectly selfish and pragmatic reason that if the app is more accessible, more people will use it. Also, it's nice to, do good things.
Right. And you'll get featured on sites that talk about things like that.
Yeah,
so
there are a lot of users who suffer because of these things because they can't use most apps because it's too hard for them to read the text or some issue with the audio, and I'm not an expert on those kind of conditions. But, there's no reason not to do this. I took a brief look at the APIs. They're not terribly hard to implement, and it's just a really good thing. It'll widen your app's reach, and that's what we all want.
Yeah, exactly. And this has been an area that I've heard Google. I think I'd read it. I don't know where I saw it, but I saw that Google was working on this for Ice Cream Sandwich, and it wasn't ready, and so they'd moved some of the stuff to Jelly Bean. It's good to see it here now.
And this is a great feature. Honestly, I kind of wish iOS would step up, and actually every platform should step up in this kind of way and do it. To me, this is almost the most important feature.
I was under the impression iOS was decent at it, but I don't really follow it as closely as I should.
So they're decent, but they could always use improvement.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it really is so important because it's more users. Ultimately, it comes down to if the app's not accessible to those types of users, they can't use it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you implement these APIs, which again aren't terribly complex, you're opening the floodgates for more users to use and enjoy your app and not have to struggle with it.
Any other thoughts on Jelly Bean before we go to what's got to be one of the craziest devices in years?
Only that since Apple copied their notifications, they've now upped the bar on notifications again.
I like their they have what they're calling rich and expandable notifications, right? Where you can actually have additional information in there and you can slide things, and I want that. It's a nice quality of life feature. I just like that
there's this weird competition in the notification space.
Yeah.
Like
Well, yeah.
This is where the platforms want to fight, right here. Notifications. All right.
And Google's got it down. Google out of the gate had the best solution. Now this solution looks even nicer. So
yeah, I mean, it's great. And again, not much there.
yeah.
So have you done your Jedi training today, Chris? Did you have your little flying droid thing and use your lightsaber?
No, I because it was early. We do the show kind of early, so I basically roll out of bed and do the show.
That's a shame. It really is.
I know, but I'll get it done this afternoon.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I envision that you have the Darth Maul style lightsaber.
Of course.
I
have although mine's broken right now, so the color of my lightsaber is hot pink. It's really embarrassing.
That's okay. It'll still cut nice.
Yeah.
And pink's a great color. But moving right along before we start that,
Yeah.
the Nexus Q.
Yeah.
Interesting. One comment that they made during the announcement that really kind of took me aback is they said it's not another black box. Well, technically true because it's round.
Right.
It essentially does everything. It's very similar to like a Roku or an Apple TV or I forgot the name of it.
Like the boxy box.
Boxy.
But it's not similar to those because it doesn't do any of the things those things do. It doesn't do Netflix. It doesn't stream media from your local network. It doesn't do Amazon's video system. It doesn't do any of those things. It doesn't do Pandora. It doesn't do anything except for Google Play.
Well, so on the high level, I would say essentially it's the same. It streams media. You have to think that they're hooking into Google Play and they will want apps for this.
It's just wild to me though because you can't even really call it a media streamer I think that's giving it too much credit for what it's capable of.
Well, that's kind of rough, but I see your point. It doesn't have an ecosystem.
Well, it has Google Play. But
the apps are designed not really.
Okay. It also doesn't even have a regular HDMI port. I mean, not even Apple does that.
I did not know that, really.
It has a micro HDMI port, which is just absolutely silly. And
okay.
I just this whole thing, I just don't get it. So, okay, here's how it works. You need to have a Jelly Bean device to connect to it, to control it. And then you have to have all of your content in Google Music or buy all of your videos through the Google Play Store in order to watch or listen to anything on it. It's $300 plus the cost of the smart device you have to have in order to configure it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in terms of competitiveness, I don't think this is competitive to a Roku or an Apple TV or a Boxy Box.
I don't think it's even competitive to the Apple TV. Because the Apple TV at least has Netflix and it has a content library that you can actually buy things from that is it's like it has that feature that it has the Play and it has Netflix and it has AirPlay and things like that, which for iOS users is very nice. And it's $99 freaking dollars. And it's smaller. It's smaller too. And it has a regular HDMI port.
I mean, so I'm not a fan of this product. I did not order one. One thing, to me, this seems like just setting up a new developer ecosystem, which is why I wanted to cover it here. So with and I could be dead wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a modified SDK for this. So then the question becomes, whenever a new platform is released or a new ecosystem comes out, should you support it? Now, personally, I've chosen not to. Because I don't think, just comparing it to the Roku box or the Apple TV, I don't think it's a interesting enough product for anyone who already has those devices to switch.
What is there available for you as a developer to do with this thing?
Currently, nothing to my knowledge. I could be wrong though.
I haven't seen anything. The only thing I know which is cool, is that it has a USB port on it for general hackability,
which is interesting.
But there's no they didn't come out with like an app solution for apps for this thing for developers, or they didn't come up with even like an AirPlay type competitive system, which would have been awesome. And it's $300.
Well, the price is an interesting fact, right? One thing is they made it in the United States.
I like that.
You like it, but you're complaining that it's $300.
I would, if it could do everything that even the most basic media streamers could do, I would be a little more open to it because I think it's got a unique look to it. It's got a unique design, and I like this made in the U.S. But I don't think it's $300 because it's made in the U.S. It might be, that might add another $80 to the cost. I don't know. Maybe it does.
No, what I read is there's some weird audio hardware that's incredibly expensive, but incredibly good in there. And that's what's bumping up the cost. But so, Chris, you don't see a future where they release an SDK, and I'm thinking within 3 months.
Oh,
and you don't think some hardcore Android developers, because remember, I'm a bad target for this device because I'm very much into cross-platform. With someone who's
they might. I
mean, the question is, how many people are going to buy it?
Nobody. I mean, they're gonna sell a handful, but I mean, this thing doesn't even do what the first Roku could do.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And the point about the audio hardware, anybody that's going to buy a $300 device to hook up to their home entertainment system is going to run the audio out to an amp, and that amp costs plenty of money, and it does the audio processing, and it will send to the speakers. So if they spent a significant portion of the hardware costs on building their little crappy amp built into this thing, that was a huge waste of money, and it just shows how they're not thinking this thing through.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think a better use of their R&D would have been to almost get in bed. I mean, they bought Motorola. Motorola makes almost all the cable boxes in this country, at least. Get Google Play on those. Really get in bed with the cable companies.
I would love to see. What I would love to see is some real usefulness out of this thing, and then maybe like if they released an SDK and developers could really make something awesome out of this, it wouldn't take too much functionality to start justifying that cost. If like Netflix could come out with their own solution for it, and that'd be great. Maybe if that's the plan. I would have liked to have them maybe say a little bit of that because it might justify the cost. Might have gotten a few more people to buy it, get a few more out in the market. Give it a better chance of success.
I mean, I think that is the plan, but I don't think they can compete with Roku, the Apple TV, or the Boxy Box in terms of media streaming. Because if you already have any of those three devices and the Google Nexus Q just adds Netflix, it's no better than the device you already have.
Yeah.
What would be interesting is if they do something radically different, and I think the way to do that is with games or apps.
Now, what they have done, before you jump to that, because I don't want to be a hater completely, and it sounds like you're going in a good spot here. I think the whole social music streaming component of it is actually semi-interesting, and the way that they kind of mentioned it a couple of times in the keynote, but one of the things they've done is you can have a couple of these in your house. Of course, that gets pretty expensive, but you can have a couple of these in your house, and they will synchronize the tracks. And that's cool because the music is not originating from your tablet on Wi-Fi. It's originating from the Google servers. And so to sync up two different devices that are streaming music from the same server, and really when they say sync them up, I mean, I would assume that means the beats are exactly the same. That's probably some pretty smart juju in there to do that.
So if they've managed to get it to where the beats are exactly the same, that is got to be some of the most impressive code currently in existence.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some, if that kind of stuff exists in this thing, I mean, there's definitely some interesting things in there.
Yeah, I think it has potential. I think what's going to happen is this version 1 is going to fail on price alone. I mean, even the most vehement, Roku haters, and I don't think there are any, or even Apple or Boxy Box haters, wouldn't spend 3 times as much money just to not buy any of those companies' products.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very strange that they're not competing on price. I really think this is going to be a play towards gaming. I could be wrong. It's totally conjecture. And I base that on some other rumors I've heard on other platforms. And I think what they're doing is, streaming is today's battle. I think gaming with these type of devices is tomorrow's.
I could see that.
And they've already lost today.
They're going to go after the 360 and the PlayStation 3 and the Wii. That kind of
Yeah, because the rumors in the console space, they're not really upgrading the hardware terribly much. They're just going more towards the general purpose box.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have new competition from Microsoft and now Sony. It just seems odd, and I hope I'm right, or else they just made a really odd decision that this is not really aimed at it as a streaming product. This is just a foot in the door. And I think V1 will fail.
Maybe
I think they'll have to come out with the V2 for $100 like everybody else.
I don't give Google that much faith. I think what it is if you are going to have an online content library of movies and TV shows and music, you need to be like Apple and Amazon and Netflix, and you need to have a set-top box to watch it on the big screen. And this is their answer to that. And they're just trying to play to their already existing Android strength, because a lot of people have Android phones. Of course, they won't have the software capabilities to use this thing, but they're trying to play to that strength. And I think that's all it is. They're just trying to answer, somebody's bought into our ecosystem, and now they need to have a media stream in their living room, and this is our solution to it.
Yeah, well, if that's all it is, I think it's a foolish decision. I'm hoping they're playing the long game here, because honestly, it looks really cool.
Well, they definitely have the money to, to pivot with this thing as needed in order to make it a success. So they might just be playing the long game just out of the fact that they're in it now. And they're gonna stick with it. But why not do something really awesome with Google TV? That's one part Google TV, one part this thing, and just have one set-top box that really does it all. This to me is almost a competitor to Google TV, because I'm not going to buy. I mean, unless I'm crazy, would I spend $200 on a Google TV and $300 on this?
So that leads to an interesting discussion. Why don't they just use Google TV? And does that mean
it's crazy, right?
Maybe they want one operating system. They have Chrome OS, they have Google TV, and now they have Android.
Well, Google TV runs Android.
It runs a modified Android, is my understanding.
It's like Honeycomb or something now.
But and that's all conjecture. One thing that I would just put out there is, Apple, Google, they all have to deal with the content companies. And Google has YouTube, which the content companies don't like.
Yeah. But they need to. They
need it. I just wonder if the reason you're not seeing all this extra streaming media capabilities is because the negotiations would have been too hard. And maybe that's why they're not playing that game. And you know what? You could be totally right, and this could really be a bad product.
Well, because they're still streaming their content from the Play Store to these devices.
But Netflix, Hulu,
Yeah.
I just, I think the people at Google are very smart. And unless they're playing a long game, this doesn't seem like a Google move.
I guess, what hardware product has Google announced that would give them that credibility? I mean, really? What if they announced and launched and sold directly themselves that... they don't even sell the Nexus phones directly themselves anymore. They sell, you can get them through the Play Store, but that first one that first Nexus S was only available through Google, and that failed. The Google TV is a flop. A lot of these endeavors, I don't think they are thinking the long game.
Again, you could be right, and in a way you are convincing me that you are right. Only because to do this, they're going to have to lose a lot of money.
And maybe that's the plan, and maybe they will.
They have the money to lose, and the next battle is the living room, in my opinion.
And maybe as they start manufacturing these things, they can start getting the cost down, and maybe it can slip to more like a $199.
Well, I think it has to be $99.
It does. I think it's overpriced at $199 for what it can do.
I think saying it very loudly that it's made in America will help with American consumers. Everywhere else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're playing the long game.
Here's the other thing. Is the Apple TV is $99, and the Xbox 360 you can get for like $299 now, or even $180 US for some deals,
or even $99 actually with the promotion. But
I mean, you just look at those prices. Yeah, it's just when you're looking at real consumers and putting a device in their living room,
honestly, between this and the Xbox, I did buy the Xbox. So
yeah, so I'm a little negative on it now. But I'm willing to change my mind on it, change my tune if things turn around.
That's okay. I'm keeping hope alive.
There you go. Google. Should we talk a little Google Plus?
Yes, they got a write API.
They did?
That is worthless.
Oh.
They're calling it History. So the idea is that your app can write to the user's Google Plus, but it goes in the special spot called History, where nobody sees until the user explicitly allows it.
Oh, I missed this. Okay.
And my understanding is that it's per function, so per bit of data you wrote.
Oh yeah, they are calling it an API too, aren't they?
Yeah. As a developer, I find that pretty much useless because, and I hate to say it, but the majority of clients who want to use these kind of social things, it's purely for advertising.
They want to get in people's streams.
Yeah. So, as a user, I would never allow anything into my stream. And I think a lot of users now instinctively hit no to that kind of thing.
Right.
Even I've been finding a lot of users actually hit no to location services, which causes all kinds of trouble. So this feels like they're trying to not be Facebook, and they want to do the right thing by the users.
Yeah.
Which I like. But I don't know if this API is worth it for developers, especially if you're small and everything you implement is a good portion of your budget.
I just would really like to see some third-party clients. That's really what makes some of these other social networks more usable.
It seems like they want to control their clients, right? So they announced a new iPad client, a new Android client.
The problem is those don't integrate with things like Hootsuite and TweetDeck and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Google's approach to Google Plus has actually been very closed.
Yeah, even though they get on Facebook and Twitter all the time for keeping things behind gates and not being part of the open web.
Yeah, I understand it that the value to them in Google Plus is data. So letting people just pull that data is not necessarily good.
Isn't that Facebook's argument though?
Right, which is what I'm concerned is Google Plus going to be, little Facebook. And I would even say Facebook's APIs are much more robust. In fact, that's a fact.
Well, they're more mature.
They're more mature, and they're more willing to let developers do what they want, which is maybe a bad thing.
And the flip side is I do find Google Plus to be a much better user experience.
I find that, the value of posts on average is a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I am noticing is a lot of news type small organizations have gotten in my feed, and I'm starting to suppress them. Which is, sometimes their stuff is interesting, but I don't know. They really need better API support. History is a step in the right direction, but I think most users are just not going to ever allow things in the feed, and it's almost a sunk cost in development.
Yeah, you're probably right. They probably, at least for a long time, they're going to keep it that way. They might eventually change, but it's probably going to be,
It'll be a while.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Do you want to talk about the event stuff, or nothing really to say about the event stuff?
I'm not really interested in the event stuff.
No. And if you have a problem with event spam like I do, just go over to your calendar settings and turn off don't automatically show events that I didn't say yes to, and it'll take them all off your calendar.
Yeah, that just seems like a simple programming error by somebody at Google.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm a little more skeptical. I kind of think that they're two big hot products that general Joe users use are Calendar and Gmail. And so if they can start spamming Google Plus stuff in front of you in those circumstances, then it gets more people on Google Plus. I don't know. I didn't really think it was. I got a few on my calendar. It was kind of annoying, but I didn't really think it was a big deal.
Chris, you're just down on them today. What's going on? Did you get an apple tattooed on your back or something?
No, I'm very worried because I rely on Gmail and Google Calendar very much for my personal stuff, for my business stuff, and they're kind of pushing Google Plus integration into those things. In some cases, it kind of backfires on them. Like I think some people got a lot of crap on their calendar.
Will Wheaton in particular,
and Robert Scoble, who had like a total mental breakdown about it.
Yeah, but this looks like a ham-handed programming error that should have been caught in a code review or in QA, and they rushed and it wasn't.
Yeah, and it's kind of silly. The default setting for Google Calendar is to allow anybody just sends you an invite, it automatically goes on your calendar, whether you've said yes or no.
It does.
That's the default setting, and if you just change that setting, it doesn't happen. This Google Plus Events problem isn't an issue.
So that really does bring up the Google versus Facebook issue. Facebook does a lot of their questionable things via settings and changing the defaults on you kind of when they want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. Right now, I get more value from Google Plus than I ever could get from Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And as a developer, I get zero value from Google Plus other than promoting the open source app or promoting open source projects I work on.
Right.
So I'm kind of torn.
When you have to follow more closely professionally when you use just personally.
Exactly. And I barely use Facebook personally. I have an account. Basically, all I do is test photo uploading for apps.
I'm the same exact way. I don't use my personal
I don't
Facebook.
use it.
Yeah. All right. Well, one of the things that this show has kicked off is a new app. But before we talk about that, I'd like to remind folks that we have the Jupiter Signal, our monthly newsletter, where as we develop things like new apps for the network or radio projects and things like that, We will be informing people on the latest and greatest about once a month. If you go over to bit.ly/JupiterSignal, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and or use the link in the show notes. And then we don't spam either. You just get the Jupiter Signal once a month with plenty of great announcements. And I'm sure one day in there will be a link to download the app that was created by our community. Won't that be exciting?
Sure will.
So any other thoughts on Google I/O, or should we jump on to this app?
How are we doing on time, Chris?
We're close, but you go as long as you want, man. We're at the hour mark right now, but we're kind of getting there. So I think we're okay.
All right. I mean, just one thing I would add, because I think we've been very off topic in terms of developer focus here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's my fault. Is one thing they did, even though they announced all these products, that is probably the most important thing for me as a developer, and I'm sure for many of you, is that they made things pretty, but they didn't actually break the APIs. So that's huge. If you don't, 4.0, 4.1, API is basically the same from what I've seen.
Yeah, they deserve a lot of credit for that.
They deserve a lot of credit. I mean, with Project Butter, they have done a lot that doesn't actually make you write new code, which is great.
That's awesome.
If you are not developing on Android and you're considering it, I think now's the time. Honestly, I'm jumping right back into Android now. I have been on a 6-month hiatus from it because I've been under contract for iOS, but there hasn't been a better time, honestly. I mean, when I started with Android, the API was horrible. It's just so much cleaner now. There's so many more resources, and they've really done a good job of making it easier for you.
Well said.
So, yeah.
All right. That's the Google I/O part 1. Are we going to do a little more Google I/O next week, you think?
Next week, we're taking it to the cloud. We have the Google Compute Engine.
Yeah.
Which generated a lot of interest, surprisingly. I want to talk about Darth and their web strategy a little bit. And honestly, in a way, the Compute Engine is probably the most exciting thing out of I/O.
Yeah, I agree. That's going to make some big impacts.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's not user facing, and even though there's really not a pretty video you can put up or a pretty little icon or anything, it's really going to affect the way you do business.
Me?
One in general, not you.
Oh.
So great example, Amazon got destroyed by a lightning storm this last week.
Yeah.
Now there's a competitor.
Yeah.
Who, one issue I have is I prefer some of the smaller cloud providers, but my clients refuse to use a name they don't trust. And right now there's only one name they trust, Amazon. So if Amazon has a problem, everything goes down.
And Google is known for stability.
Google's known for stability. I mean, one issue is Google's not known for support.
Oh, very true.
So there's no phone number. Although with Amazon, there's really not that much support either. But I mean, another thing that this will touch on the enterprise market, which, Chris, I got a lot of emails from developers who listen to the show, but actually work in the enterprise space on like Java version 1.4.
Oh, wow.
And are very sad. This is something they may be able to use because Google's a pretty big Java supporter. If you look at the current app engine, definitely supports Java. Yeah, and I think we're getting too much ahead of it, too much into it now, but we'll definitely talk about it next week.
All right. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
That's a topic that piques my interest from a lot of different angles. So, okay, should we then wrap the Google I/O stuff for today at that?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay, so why don't we give a little app progress update on the Jupiter Broadcasting community app that we've had started? All
right, Chris. So
I'm ready.
You guys have been keeping me busy. We currently have 18 forks and 62 people watching the repo.
Hey, awesome.
You guys have been blowing up my email, so good work. Keep it up. We've already had several successful pull requests that I've merged in.
Nice.
I wish I remembered names, but I didn't write them down. But a lot of help. What we're currently doing is we opened issues. If you're familiar with GitHub, there's a functionality called issues to kind of hammer out coding standards and a functional spec. We've made a lot of progress. We've had a lot of feedback. All I would say is it's turning to be a great environment, especially for junior developers.
Cool.
It's just really, everybody's been friendly. Everybody's been great. we have a few silent coders who just randomly send me a pull request without saying a word, which is awesome. I mean, if you're new, this is really a place to go.
This is exciting. So we have a link in the show notes to the GitHub project. Is that how people should get started? Just go check out the GitHub page?
Yeah, go right to the GitHub page. Actually, if you want, go to the GitHub page and click on the issues, and you can read the current conversations that are happening.
Oh, okay.
And you can just jump right into the conversation. If you have an idea, a correction, anything, jump in. And again, if you're not familiar with Git, GitHub does offer very easy to use GUI Git clients. So
cool, man.
don't let that be a barrier.
That's awesome. So I can't wait to start talking about that on the show as that starts getting rolling. That's going to be a great topic to cover. So go check it out, people. We put a link to that in the show notes. All right, now you've got a book recommendation, Michael.
I do. So I got an email pretty quickly last week when I recommended JavaScript: The Good Parts,
right.
from a listener who wanted to show me Eloquent JavaScript, and I've actually read it and I just forgot about it.
Oh, okay.
It's a very good book. I still kind of like JavaScript: The Good Parts better.
Okay.
But this is a great place to start, especially if it says, a modern introduction to computer programming. So if you're a new developer and you want to, start with the web, that's great. If you're a Java developer or some other type of developer and you want to jump into web development, it's great. It's I think you can get it via the Amazon affiliate link.
Oh yeah. I'll put a link.
Okay.
In the show notes. The show note link will have the Amazon affiliate. So if you grab it, you support the network.
It's definitely a good read, even if you're not brand new. Sometimes you need to just brush up on a technology you haven't used in a while.
It's $13 on Amazon for the Kindle edition. That's like cheaper than Taco Bell for 2.
Now I want Taco Bell.
I know. But you could also get a book for that price. See?
You could, and you could learn something.
All right, sir. Should we move on to our tool of the week?
Yes, we should. So it's called DroidDraw.
DroidDraw, huh?
This is an older tool. Basically,
okay.
It allows you to draw an Android GUI without using Eclipse.
This is neat.
The reason I mention it is because I got some emails, and I myself don't like Eclipse, although I do like the new version. So if you're not using Eclipse, you don't get that nice layout tool they offer. This is a pretty decent replacement for that. I'm not going to lie, you're still going to have to drop in and edit the XML that's generated yourself. But it's good for some quick prototyping and just to get you started.
You can set different screen sizes so you can see what things would look at a QVGA resolution or WVGA portrait or landscape. Well, it's got some of the lower end resolutions and things like that. It's kind of cool.
It's an older tool. One thing, it's free, and I believe it's actually open source, but I could be wrong.
Very cool. It's a little Java applet, so it runs in your browser.
Yeah, and there's a downloadable version that runs a lot better
over at droiddraw.org. That's a good one though, just to kind of get going on your a layout for a basic Android app.
Yeah, because I think it ties into one of our first feedbacks about not wanting to use IDEs or questioning the use of IDEs. Just because Google says Eclipse is the preferred or suggested, or however they phrase it, Android development environment, doesn't mean it's the only choice.
Right.
And if you're more comfortable in, say, an IntelliJ or a Vim or, whatever, maybe even NetBeans, there's no reason you can't do that. And a lot of the times you're better off in an environment rather than the suggested one, if you're fast, if you have your key combos and your setups.
There you have it. That's
and I do have one last thing, Chris, that I forgot in the docs. I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem.
Chris, your Ubuntu developer community is amazing.
Did they? Oh, yeah, because last week you talked about how you started to use Mono, but you kind of hit a wall and you needed some ideas, right?
I got a lot of ideas. So what I'm doing is I'm going with creating a bridge layer, for lack of a better term, between Mono and between Python to actually integrate with the Unity notification things I want to do.
Interesting.
When I have time to actually start doing it, I'm going to put it on GitHub as open source under Apache.
Cool.
As a sort of thank you to the community.
Cool. So this will bridge so your back end stuff will kind of be Mono based, but your front end user stuff will be be Python based? Am I following, or how's that work? Or I'll wait. You can give them more details later. You don't have to give it all now. But
sure,
I'm curious.
I could give a high level overview now.
Okay, yeah, just a little one.
A lot of the app is written in Mono, and a lot of the screen drawings written in Mono too. So this would just be a functionality bridge. Now, I'm not 100% sure it works, and I'm messing with different possibilities. But I'm just really grateful for all the feedback and all the suggestions. And I think open sourcing it would be a great way to help people.
It's awesome.
Because Chris, after more evaluation after the show, my options were try to make this bridge or restart in Python. So the side effect is that the Ubuntu version is going to be a little delayed because this actually has to get done.
Hey, but I think the end product, if it's better integrated with the desktop, it looks like it belongs on a desktop that should be, on a Unity desktop. That's totally worth it.
Yeah. And just to rehash, the reason I'm not using Qt or anything like that is because it was already written in Mono.
Yeah.
So I could restart in something else, but I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, as a community, it seems like there is a growing and very dedicated Ubuntu developer community. That really gives me hope for the platform as a whole.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the people are excited about it and willing to help.
Because a few things I didn't see gave me the most hope. I was very open that the app itself is commercial. No spam, no trolling, nothing.
Oh, yeah. No hard time about it.
The only kind of value judgments I got were people who work in, not for Canonical, but are part of the community or whatever, happy to see commercial development. And that just, if they continue that attitude, that will really foster more support.
Yeah. Yeah, and as they get more developers using the platform, there you go. It's like a snowball effect. That's awesome. All right, sir. Well, anything else you want to cover?
That's it.
Wow, that's a great show. I've been looking forward to talking about that Google I/O stuff since the keynote. So I watched it live just so that way I'd have thoughts on the stuff they'd covered. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. Michael, where can people follow you during the week? See what you're up to.
You can find me on Google Plus by searching my name. Please don't send me event invites. You can find me at Twitter at Dumanuco. You can find my website at mdominic.com. And you can find my GitHub, which is Dominic M.
There you go, where you'll find cool things like the Jupiter Broadcasting Community app. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm twitter.com/ChrisLAS. And also, I'd like to remind you about the affiliate links at the bottom of the website. If you're going to shop at Amazon or Newegg or ThinkGeek or Best Buy, click on one of those links first and you'll support the network when you do so. All right, Michael. Well, we'll be live right back here Monday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, which is noon Eastern. And then the episode's released for download just a little bit after that. Thanks for a great show, sir.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. See you next week.